Most people are terrified of their darkness. We're taught to avoid pain, suppress anger, ignore jealousy, and bury shame. We're told to think positive, stay high vibe, and be good people. But what if I told you that the very energy you've been taught to fear, the toxic energy, the emotional poison, the chaos inside you, isn't your enemy? What if I told you it's your power source? That if you knew how to face it, feel it, and transmute it, you could activate something ancient and unstoppable in your soul. That's what this is about. Not escaping the shadows, but becoming the vibration that commands them. I've been to the edge. Spiritually, emotionally, energetically. I've sat in rooms where the silence was so thick with pain it felt alive. I've stood in front of people who smiled on the outside but were rotting with resentment and self-hate on the inside. And I've seen what happens when someone finally says, "Enough, I'm not running from this anymore. I'm going in." Something changes. Visibly, tangibly. Their field begins to distort in the best way. The density of all that toxic energy starts to move, not because it's getting cleansed or removed, but because it's being claimed. And when that happens, their vibration doesn't just rise, it deepens, thickens, darkens. Not in a demonic way, but in a grounded, magnetic, unshakable way. That is shadow vibration. And it's the most potent frequency you can carry in a world addicted to pretending. To activate it, you must first understand one fundamental truth. Toxic energy is not evil. It's trapped power. Think about that. Every moment someone betrayed you, every time you were silenced, every time you swallowed rage instead of expressing it, that energy didn't disappear. It buried itself inside you. And buried energy becomes toxic only when it's repressed. The moment you turn toward it, acknowledge it, and allow it to move through you, it stops being poison. It becomes fuel. But here's the catch. It's not enough to feel it. You have to face it with consciousness. You have to look at it and say, "You don't control me. I see you. I honor you. Now let's transform." That's where the activation begins. Imagine this. You're sitting in a room, and a wave of toxic emotion hits you, maybe grief, maybe rage, maybe shame. Most people would try to distract themselves, scroll, eat, call someone, meditate it away, but not you. Not now. Instead, you close your eyes, breathe, and lean into it. You ask, "Where in my body do I feel this?" You go there. You let it burn. Not to destroy you, but to alchemize you. You might cry. You might shake. You might scream into a pillow. But then something strange happens. The emotion starts to shift. It starts to speak. Not in words, but in a raw, primal knowing. And you realize it's not just an emotion. It's a message, a memory of power you once gave away. And now you're pulling it back. This is the first step toward activating shadow vibration, reclaiming the energy trapped in your own toxicity. But it's not about becoming toxic. It's about owning that you have toxicity, like every human does, and choosing to turn it into mastery. You don't bypass your ugliness. You embrace it with precision. You don't justify your wounds. You wield them with intention. This is the path of the spiritual warrior, not the light worker who floats above the pain, but the shadow worker who dives into it and returns crowned. I want you to reflect deeply for a second. When was the last time you let yourself fully feel the bad emotions without judgment? Not analyze them, not fix them, just be with them. Most people can't, because they've been programmed to believe that feeling toxic energy makes them broken. But the truth is, feeling it consciously makes you free. It makes you whole. Because shadow vibration doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being fused with every part of yourself, light, dark, sacred, wild, angry, divine. And when someone like that walks into a room, the energy changes. People feel it. They may not know why, but they do know they're in the presence of someone who cannot be manipulated, someone who has nothing to hide. There's also a practical layer to this. Shadow vibration isn't just an emotional state, it's an energetic field. It changes how you move through the world. When you activate it, your voice deepens not always in sound, but in resonance. Your eyes become sharper. Your body language becomes slower, more intentional. You don't chase, you attract. Not because you're trying to manifest, but because your field is undeniable. You've stopped leaking energy through over-explanation, people-pleasing, or spiritual bypassing. You've become an energetic fortress, not closed off, but centered, and that changes everything. People start confessing things to you. Opportunities begin to bend around your timing. Even technology reacts differently. Why? Because you're no longer emitting fragmented, confused, diluted signals. You're transmitting truth even if it's uncomfortable. So I ask you right now, what part of yourself are you still labeling as toxic that might actually be the gateway to your deepest power? What if your rage isn't something to fix but something to refine? What if your jealousy is pointing to a place where you've abandoned your own greatness? What if your shame is just your soul saying, "This isn't who we really are, let's rise"? These are not rhetorical questions. They are invitations. Because once you stop fearing your shadow, you stop being controlled by anything external. The world doesn't need more fake light. It needs more authentic depth. And that starts with us, with you, right here, right now. Not by escaping toxic energy, but by activating the vibration that transmutes it into power on contact. This is the path. Not easy, not always beautiful, but true. And it's only just beginning.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There's a fire inside you, not the gentle flame of hope or the flicker of inspiration. I'm talking about the raw, roaring inferno that most people spend their entire lives trying to suppress. The one that rises when you're betrayed. The one that shakes your bones when you're humiliated, disrespected, or pushed to the edge. That fire is not dysfunction. It's not weakness. It's frequency. And once you understand how to sit inside that fire without letting it burn you, you unlock one of the most untouchable forms of spiritual power on this planet. Emotional chaos is not a mistake. It's a signal, a cosmic flare going off inside your nervous system telling you something's trying to be born, but you're still resisting it. We've been taught to fear chaos, to sedate it, to numb it with logic or spiritual bypassing. But chaos is sacred. It's the primal language of the soul. It doesn't speak in affirmations, it speaks in floods. And when you meet those floods with presence, you don't drown. You transform. The fire doesn't consume you, it refines you. Here's the truth. Emotional chaos is not random. It shows up exactly when you're ready to evolve but still clinging to a version of yourself that can't come with you. That's why it feels like you're falling apart. Because you are. The structures built from your wounds, your conditioning, your people-pleasing, your playing small, they're collapsing. Not as punishment, as preparation. And the faster you stop trying to fix the chaos and start listening to what it's trying to ignite, the sooner you step into a state of power that can't be faked, stolen, or shaken. Think about the last time you were emotionally overwhelmed. What did you do? Did you try to suppress it? Did you distract yourself? Or did you feel it fully without a story, without judgment, without trying to change it? Because that's the doorway. That's how we enter the frequency of fire. We let it burn, not to suffer, but to purify. We breathe through the shaking. We cry without apology. We scream into the void if we must. And then something miraculous happens. We stop identifying with the chaos and we start channeling it. It becomes movement. It becomes art. It becomes truth. That's the alchemy no one teaches you in school. That's the transmission you were born to embody. When you learn to use emotional chaos as a spiritual technology, your entire life changes. You stop fearing triggers. You welcome them. Because you know every trigger is a portal to deeper self-awareness. You stop avoiding confrontation. You meet it head-on. Because you know your boundaries are forged in fire, not in politeness. You stop explaining yourself to people who can't hear you, because your energy speaks louder than words. That's what happens when you walk through enough chaos consciously. You become undeniable. Not because you've mastered perfection, but because you've mastered presence under pressure. And listen, this isn't just about you. When you activate this level of shadow vibration, you become a catalyst for everyone around you. Your energy becomes so coherent, so anchored, that it either wakes people up or drives them away. And that's not a loss. That's alignment. Because people who can't sit with their own chaos will always be threatened by someone who's mastered theirs. But the ones who are ready, they'll feel your field like a lighthouse in a storm. They'll find you, because you become the embodiment of something they've been seeking their whole lives. A human who is not afraid to feel everything and still stand strong. So ask yourself this: what would happen if you stopped trying to escape your emotional chaos and started using it as a compass? What if every wave of intensity was actually a message from your higher self saying, "You're getting warmer, keep going. There's power on the other side of this. The fire is not the end, it's the beginning. Let it burn." There's a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't scream for attention. It just is. It walks into a room and everything slows down. Conversations shift. People turn. Not because of charisma or beauty or charm, but because of magnetism. Shadow vibration creates that magnetism. And the most mysterious part, it doesn't come from light. It comes from darkness. Not the darkness of evil or destruction, but the darkness of depth, presence, and wholeness. The kind of darkness that has nothing to prove because it has nothing to hide. When we activate that within ourselves, we stop chasing what we want and start attracting it effortlessly. You've probably felt this energy before. Maybe in someone who didn't say much, but carried a presence you couldn't shake. Maybe in those rare moments when you felt completely grounded, unapologetically real, and fully in your body. That's not an accident. That's shadow vibration working through the field. It's what happens when you've faced enough of your rain emotional chaos, integrated enough of your rejected pieces, and stopped apologizing for your intensity. The result is a field so coherent, so solid, so anchored in truth that it becomes impossible to ignore. Let's break it down. Most people try to manifest from a place of lack. I want this because I don't have it. That's an energetic repellent. The universe doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your frequency. And if your frequency is fragmented, needy, or disconnected from your shadow, it sends out a signal of distortion. But when you're operating from shadow vibration, you don't ask for what you want from a place of lack. You command it not through force, but through resonance. You become the kind of person who naturally attracts the people, experiences, and opportunities that match your depth, not just your desires. The secret is this: shadow vibration creates gravitas. It makes you heavy in the best way, not sluggish, not depressive, but dense with presence. People feel safe around you, not because you're soft, but because you're real. They feel your edges. Your silence says more than your words. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Your energy speaks on levels their conscious mind can't even interpret. And that's why it works. Because in a world of noise, the deepest signal wins. And here's the paradox: the more you own your darkness, the more light you emit. Not artificial light, not performative positivity, but the kind of inner glow that comes from having met your own abyss and made peace with it. That's magnetic. That's unforgettable. That's the energy that draws lovers, allies, mentors, and miracles, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you become the mirror they didn't know they were searching for. But let's get even more practical. Shadow vibration affects your posture, your eyes, your tone of voice. You move slower. You speak less, but every word lands with weight. You listen differently, not waiting to reply, but absorbing everything. You stop rushing. You stop begging. You stop proving. That kind of energy short-circuits manipulation. It disarms narcissists. It exposes lies. It attracts truth. And when truth meets truth, manifestation becomes inevitable. You're no longer trying to create from thin air. You're simply receiving what matches your inner reality. So ask yourself this: what do you truly desire but secretly feel unworthy of? Is it love, power, wealth, influence? Now ask yourself, what part of your shadow have you not integrated that's blocking that flow? Because here's the truth no one tells you. You don't get what you're aligned with. And alignment doesn't come from perfection. It comes from wholeness, from having the courage to say, yes, I have rage, I have fear, I have wounds, and I'm still worthy. I'm still magnetic. I'm still divine. You don't need to be more high vibe. You need to be more honest, because truth is the highest vibration, and shadow vibration is simply truth that has passed through fire and come out the other side, unafraid to be seen. There comes a moment on every true spiritual path where you realize this isn't about learning more. It's not about collecting teachings, chasing gurus, or memorizing mantras. It's about embodiment, about integration, about taking everything you've experienced, your pain, your rage, your shame, your resilience, and locking it into your identity so deeply that you never have to try to be powerful again. Because you are, not as a performance, but as a presence. That's the integration code. It's the final phase of shadow vibration. And once it's activated, your power doesn't flicker, it stays. This is where most people fall off. They awaken. They feel their fire. They start transmuting their toxic energy. They even begin to attract miracles. But then something happens, an emotional collapse, a breakup, a loss, and they revert. They forget their power. They start spiraling, doubting, explaining, shrinking. Why? Because they never integrated the vibration. They experienced it, but they didn't become it. And that's the difference between a spiritual high and a spiritual anchor. Integration means the frequency is now your default, not your peak. It's who you are, not what you access. So how do we do that? How do we lock shadow vibration into our nervous system, our voice, our breath, our walk, our life? We start by making it personal. You have to stop seeing shadow work as a technique and start seeing it as a relationship with yourself, with your soul, with your energy. You have to stop compartmentalizing your power. You can't be fierce in your meditations but apologetic in your relationships. You can't be raw and real in solitude but shrink when it's time to speak truth in public. Integration means you are the same everywhere. You don't shift your vibe to make others comfortable. You don't dilute your intensity to avoid judgment. You lead with your shadow-vibrated truth because it's the most real thing you have. Next, you must ritualize the embodiment, not just mentally but physically. Your body remembers. So give it commands. Speak your identity into existence daily, not as an affirmation, but as a declaration. I am the embodiment of integrated power. I move through the world grounded in shadow vibration. I am unshakable because I've already met myself in every form. Don't whisper it, own it. And then act like it's already true. Because once your nervous system believes it, the world mirrors it back to you. But here's the secret most don't talk about. Integration isn't just about strength. It's about softness too. Real power doesn't need to roar. Once you've integrated shadow vibration, you don't fight to be seen. You don't argue to be right. You don't panic when things fall apart. You breathe because you trust your field will hold. You pause because your silence is louder than noise. You smile because you know nothing real can be taken from you. That level of stillness, that's not detachment, that's mastery. So let this land deeply. Integrating shadow vibration is not about becoming invincible. It's about becoming inevitable. It's about becoming someone who can no longer be manipulated, abandoned, or forgotten because you've remembered yourself fully, fiercely, and forever. Ask yourself now, from the deepest part of your being, what would my life look like if I never again collapsed into self-doubt, self-abandonment, or self-betrayal? What would happen if I walked into every room, every relationship, every opportunity as someone who is already powerful, already the vibration? That's the integration code. And once it's locked in, you don't chase transformation anymore. You are the transformation, and the world responds accordingly.